To mark the 10-year anniversary of our partnership with STS Component Solutions, Lokad was delighted to welcome in studio their president, Tim Russo. Tim generously sat down with Joannes and me and answered questions on what exactly has made the project such a success. So Tim, first of all, thank you very much for joining us in studio. Honestly, it's a pleasure to finally have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having us in today. Appreciate it.
We spoke to you a couple of times on LinkedIn before, but this is the first time. I think this is the first time you've been in the office. Is that correct?
First time visiting the Lokad office, and really impressed with the office, the team, and thanks for having us.
Yeah. Well, and I actually did check the records on this. Last month, I believe, was the 10-year anniversary of the partnership between Lokad and STS. We'll get to the project in a moment, but if you could set the table a little bit, what is the size of STS Component Solutions operations, just for people who might not know?
Yeah, absolutely. STS Component Solutions is an OEM distributor for 30 plus partners. We support the aerospace industry, primarily airlines and MROs globally, delivering parts in over 82 countries. Over 6,000 quotes a day go out from our system to operators globally, and it's supported out of Palm City, Florida. But we're also part of the larger STS Aviation Group with facilities in the UK, in the Middle East, and in the States, in Melbourne, Florida, where we're doing heavy maintenance, modifications, passenger to freight conversions, Wi-Fi, engineering, staffing, so part of the larger umbrella of STS Aviation Group.
Well, thank you. And as I said a few moments ago, 10 years working together. Now, as Joannes, I'm sure will say at some point, a really good solution starts with a good understanding of the problem. So, Tim, if we can go back in time a little bit, what exactly were the problems that STS wanted to solve? So this is before Lokad.
Sure. Yeah, and when we look at the history of STS Component Solutions specifically, and as we continue to evolve and mature within the industry, as we started to expand, we were doing a lot of things manually, right? The planning processes, the processing of RFQs, the purchasing of material, and which at some point you take a look and you say it's not scalable. We were growing at a fast pace, and then one of the things we did early on, and if you go back to that 10-year point, is we invested in our data services team. So we had the foresight back before. I think it's a lot more common now to have a data team on your staff, regardless of the industry you're in. But we did that, roughly 10 years ago, understanding how important data was to our industry, how important it was going to be to make decisions to scale our business. And we knew what we were doing, while it worked, and the team did a really, really good job building the business to that point, we needed to find the systems, the tools to take us to the next level.
It's interesting where you framed that, because again, you said, and this is a point that I've made before, you can still be so you can be successful and still want to evolve. It's not necessarily binary, like, no, nothing works, we're not doing it right. It's no, things are working, but we want to go to the next level. Is that how you discussed it internally?
Yeah, well, I think, within our industry, obviously everyone is coming off the heels of COVID and tariffs. The one thing that's constant in our industry is change. That didn't start with tariffs. That didn't start with COVID. That is, and as you build a business and as you build a team, change is inevitable. Building your team to know that, hey, there's always a better way. There's always a more efficient way. That the technology is changing so at such a fast pace to be able to scale and keep up with that. But having that in as part of your culture of the organization, and keeping the team engaged with what's out there, what could make our organization run a lot more efficiently, and what is the technology that we were willing to invest in and embrace, and it was our data. It was the tools we use from not only forecasting, but also the tools we use for KPIs, and the tools and the team that could help manage that. So moving it from a very manual keystroke entry, data entry to more automation and having the system and the tool provide the dashboard and the analytics for us to make the right decisions for our business as it scaled.
Thank you, Tim. And Joannes, as you listen to that, how emblematic are Tim's sentiments of aerospace companies in general? Because he seems very forward-thinking in his description, and that goes back many, many years.
I mean, first, the pace of change, I think, is kind of inversely proportional to the size of companies. You know, if you are at, let's say, a giant like Honeywell, yes, things change, but let's be real, it's not the same pace. That would be true for Boeing. That would be true for Airbus. It's obviously the more nimble players that are growing who undergrow the change the fastest. So it's like no surprise there. But still, you know, there is also a lot of small companies who do not grow and fail to change. So it's not because you're small that automatically you have you are agile. Let's say that being small gives you the possibility to be agile if you execute, you know, your business with excellently. But it's never a given. It's never a given. And also, I think the aerospace is one of those business that is fiercely competitive. It is extremely competitive. It is global. So you are competing with, you know, companies from across many continents. It's the actors are also very, I would say, reacting very swiftly. Also, so again, that doesn't pave the way for complacency. If you are like, again, a very, very large OEM, let's say Honeywell, the amount of trust that actors have would kind of delay feedback. But I think for small company, feedbacks comes very, very swiftly. Again, both positive and negative. So so yes, I think that's the changes have been enormous, and indeed, aviation is still changing rapidly overall, you know, as an industry.
Absolutely.
Well, Tim, again, when we talk about the agility that Joannes just mentioned, I'm curious, before we actually started the recording, you mentioned about how what you value most, it's not just the tools, it's not the technology, it's the fact that you have a team that is able to leverage those technologies and those tools. So I'm just curious, in your own estimation, what is it about STS's team that you think sets it apart in terms of adopting all of these technologies?
It's the culture. It's the culture of innovation. It's the culture of everyone executing at the highest level. You know, when you look at the technology that you put in place, and you look at the automation, you look at what AI is doing, and how we're looking to embrace it. What that can't do is the last 5%, right?
Which is critical.
Is the business aspect, the relationship, and the execution. Right? You know, the ability to still have a team out there in front with the customers. Technology is never going to change that. So when we look at our business, you know, from a culture perspective, having continuing to expand, right, growing our portfolio of products, doubling that in time. You know, the ability for us to continue to execute comes down to the people that we have, right? It's also the systems and the tools we provide them, right? They have to have the right systems and tools, and that's why, you know, we're here. That's, you know, one of the reasons that Lokad is ingrained in the infrastructure within STS. But it's also, you know, the ability to execute and the people we have, and it's second to none in our industry.
Well, that's a perfect transition because, again, 10 years together, I'm just curious, what was it about Lokad and the offering that 10 years ago made STS think, okay, these guys in France, we're in the States, these guys in France, these are the guys for us. These are our kind of people.
Yeah.
What was it?
You know, we go back to relationships, and we go back to people. You know, yes, we did not know about COVID. We did not know tariffs were coming. We did not know the industry was going to continue to have these challenges. But what we could tell early on was that these are the people that we would be willing to face those challenges with, right? You know, you could embrace a system, a tool, a piece of technology, but the one thing you have to remember, that technology has to evolve. it has to change. Our business is changing constantly. And so we were looking for the right partner that would not only put a flashy dashboard in front of us, but know that in 12, 18, 24 months, that dashboard may need to change. And I think those conversations early on, our team did a really good job evaluating the market, right? We weren't afraid of, the distance between the two businesses, but we saw the ingenuity and we saw the technology behind the systems that you had in the forecast, and what we were doing in other industries, right? Some people might have been, some people may not have embraced that, but we look at that and say, what are the best practices from other industries, and how could we incorporate that into what we're doing in aerospace? And it goes back to that culture of innovation. Building that relationship, and we looked at that as a positive. We looked at that as a partner for the long term, that we knew whatever we face, we're going to figure it out. We're going to pivot. We're going to evolve. We know that what we have in front of us now might be outdated soon, and we're going to work through it together. And that's 10 years ago. That's what the team saw. And so, and really now to look back and say, wow, we've executed, along the way.
Yes, and STS, I mean, again, I'm very grateful for that. You were a part of the pioneers to try this supply chain scientist approach. At the time, you were among the very first companies who trusted us, and this idea that, because it was kind of strange in a way. It is to say, what we want is a technological stack that make it very fast to roll out bespoke numerical recipes. So it is a little strange, because if you take at face value, what do you have? Nothing. It's just a blank sheet. Yes, okay. So you're essentially buying the commitment of an engineering team to craft and then maintain this this numerical recipe to drive, let's say, purchase orders, investments, and everything. But and where I think it was you were part of the visionaries that trust us with this vision, is the idea that those numerical recipes, they are contextual. If the market changed, you have to dispose of the recipe that you had and create a new one. And also the applicative landscape of STS was itself evolving. So you have like different versions of the same software. You have access to more data. Some stuff that was the quality of data was low 10 years ago, now is excellent, etc. So it would be fairly, I would say, dumb to say we are going to use a recipe that was good 10 years ago when tons of data were just not there, to say we are going to still use the same recipe that just ignore I would say a much enriched data set that we have now. So it's plenty of things. Sometimes a business that is changing, the applicative landscape, the competitive landscape. It can be even regulatory stuff with tariff and whatnot. And the idea was to trust an engineering team that would constantly monitor the recipes and upgrade them so that they fit your present need, instead of reflecting the reality when we closed the initial deal, X years ago, and this X increasing over time.
Yeah, and if I look back at the process time, you go back to, pre-COVID, 2019, we were growing rapidly. Our planning process for inventory planning, spreadsheet based, and we were using some tools, but it could take anywhere from 7, 14, 21 days to plan for a catalog of parts based on the demand we were seeing to put through the system.
Which is quite fast. Let's acknowledge
by the industry standard, that is quite fast. Fast.
And so now, if you look at where we are today,
yes,
our planners come into a dashboard that refreshes every night based on the demand that happened. And it's unbelievable. We expect change.
Yes.
Right. And so when we look back and say, our job is not to see a challenge or something changes in the market and then start planning. No, planning has to be involved. It has to be part of the systems that, whatever happens today. So our buyers, our planners are coming in to a fresh dashboard every morning based on the demand that the system was looking at the day prior. And we put automation in place to really have that go seamlessly through to our OEM partners, hands off if it meets certain criteria, and being able to share the vision back then of where, what we wanted, where we saw it, and to be able to execute that while we're growing our business. We're changing the portfolio of products we distribute. We've expanded. We've expanded. Whether it's rotable components, expendables, which take different takes a whole different planning process for, and to be able to do that seamlessly as we continue to grow our partnerships within the industry, it was key. And it's still to this day. I'm excited about where we are, but I'm more excited about where we're going. Right? You can't build your business looking in the rearview mirror. You gotta, I'm more excited about what's to come. And it doesn't mean there aren't going to be challenges. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be things that happen in the economy. But I know we have the right people, we have the right system, and we have the right tools to face anything that happens.
Well, thank you, Tim. And speaking of people, Joannes, we talked about numerical recipes and we talked about STS components and their team. From your perspective, how critical is the supply chain scientist, that role in progress and success and evolution?
It's like super, super critical. And I would like to emphasize that what is very critical is to have people who are going to spend a lot of time paying attention to all the details. Because that's the thing, is that from afar, I think one of the sin of the, I would say, of the enterprise vendors is to approach verticals, in a very uniform fashion.
Yes.
Like, that's going to, if it fits for this one, it's going to fit for this one. And the problem is that supply chain, what you get when you do that is that you get a lot of nonsense and on our stuff that can be very mundane. Just an example, STS AirPro, for example, we have tubes and flexibles and cable, and when you want to think about those, it was, by the way, such a, I would say, a devilishly complicated puzzle for us. But the thing is that if you have 100, I'm going to use metric
round
system.
numbers,
So 100 meters of tube. It's not the same thing if you have like one piece that is 100 meters long, or if you have 10 pieces that are 10 times 10 meters. Because if the client say, I need something that is like 20 meter, it's you can't just take two that are 10 and reattach them. And so suddenly when you look at your inventories, you need to take into account, okay, I have thousands of meters of tubes, but what is the exact split that I have in stock, and and how is composed the demand that I get? It is a subtle catch, but it's a sort of situation where if you approach a problem, I would say naively, you're going to say, I have X kilometers in stock, yes, but turn out that it's actually leftovers from small cuts, and they pile very high, but their resale value is almost nil because nobody wants that and can use that. So that it's a small, just an example of a small catch, but it's a critical product that you're selling, and if you don't embrace a vision that is deeply, I would say, in tune with what people are looking for, then it doesn't work. And that's where the supply chain scientist is really bridging the gap. When I say numerical recipe, it's about paying attention to those details that really will do or undo the validity of the numerical recipe. It's going to be the difference between a system where the planner look at the number and say, this is just nonsense, I am not going to use that, go back to the spreadsheet, versus something where, yes, this thing is like matching my understanding of the domain. It understands my constraints, understand what we are trying to do here. And the number that I get is, again, that's the motto of Lokad, approximately correct. It's obviously, your demand is so erratic and intermittent. Same thing, by the way, for the lead times. Because we need to anticipate the lead times as well. And right now, aviation as a whole is like under super pressure. So tons of OEM are struggling to ramp up the capacity, and thus the delays are very erratic as well.
But yeah, the details matter. And so
Yes.
if we look at AirPro, and it's a great case study because so 24 months ago, we were in a different facility manufacturing about 2,500 hoses, aircraft hoses, a month. So, and now moved the facility into our Palm City office, almost doubled our throughput within manufacturing now, increased that to almost 4,000 hoses a month, and let's optimize the planning process. You know, we know we have the supply chain challenges going on, lead time changes are happening, pricing fluctuation, tariffs, and you know, let's increase that throughput. But in order to go from 2,500 hoses a month to 4,000, the processes and planning behind that are so key, and the level of detail that goes on. So it's you know, so for AirPro, you know, we continue to look at that, and you know, we expect to be at 8,000 hoses, you know, in short time. But you know, yes, constrained by, you know, material and stuff to build them. But at the end of the day, having the systems and the tools to be able to capture that, that's key.
Well, Tim, again, as president, bearing in mind that this project has evolved a lot over the last 10 years, how do you oversee the ongoing change management of the size of your operations? You've got the team in Paris, you've got the dashboards. How do you handle all of that?
Well, I think it's, you know, the team does an amazing job collaborating. You know, they collaborate weekly. You know, we talk about, you know, the new partnerships we're engaging with, try to bring the team, you know, so the team behind the scenes into the forefront from the planning process. And I think, you know, as we engage a new partner, you know, we're excited about all of, you know, of introducing them to Lokad, because, you know, as you mentioned, we have the ability, and it's part of the structure. Every product line, and almost we could go down to the SKU, could have its own demand profile, and we're able to plan around that, right? And so, yes, we don't paint with the broad brush. We go and every product line and part number could have its own profile to be able to optimize, you know, the inventory we have. And if we look at over time, being able to grow the business, you know, because our partners, similar to our customers, they want you to have the right parts at the right time at the right location. That's it. That's the problem we're trying to solve. Now we throw all the complexity in the mix, and you know, but it's ultimately ensuring that we have the visibility, we have the team, but also our team is constantly looking at what's next, right? You know, that culture of innovation, that passion to find out what else is out there. And they talk about that with your team on a regular basis. So, you know, whether it's technology, whether it's, you know, there are data points that the team is looking at today that when we implemented 2019 or when we were looking at it, would never be part of the equation. They just weren't part of what we needed to look at. But today we do. And so to be able to continue and evolve and build that as part of what we're doing together, it's impressive.
Yes, and I would like to point out that one of the key ingredients to have a team that is forward-looking is to make sure they are not completely, I would say, overwhelmed by firefighting.
Absolutely.
There are many, I would say, the typical supply chain team in your average company worldwide is constantly firefighting, and they are firefighting even if nothing is happening. You know, there is no tariff. It's just, you know, the humdrum of the regular business, and they are
By
firefighting just because the systems that they have, software system, just give them crazy suggestions, so they have to, you know, it's like whack-a-mole. You prevent the ERP to make like a massive purchase order mistake, and bam, it creates another crazy purchase order, and you whack, and it's like every single day you have hundreds of alerts, and so complete whack-a-mole. Obviously, sometimes because there is so many alerts and exceptions to process that mistakes are made, and so then people have to call back their suppliers, say no, it was a mistake, we need to revise that. It creates, so again, complete firefighting. And I believe that, as you were saying, you cannot, innovate and progress if you look in the rearview mirror, and that's completely true. And those mistakes, those insane decisions that create so much firefighting, it makes that everybody is like completely is I would say prisoner of problems that are, I would say, backward looking. You're trying to duct tape the mistake that you did last week, and it's going to consume all your energy. And I think here the key is to manage to get the process sufficiently smooth so that people just have like the intellectual bandwidth to look ahead, which means not wasting all your time and energy fighting again numerical recipes that just give you nonsense. Again, even when nothing, the important part is that even when there is no disruption happening, because that's really what I think. It is okay to think that automated systems cannot respond overnight super smartly to a radical change, let's say a complete 180-degree change on tariff policy by a major administration. That is very difficult. But when it's just the humdrum of the industry, then there is no excuse, I think.
Yeah. Well, Tim, that brings us to the question that I think everyone who's watching has been saying. This all sounds great, but Tim, how do you know that this is all working? You can have all the great dashboards, you can have a great relationship. Joannes and I are lovely to talk to, but how do you know the project is working?
As we continue to expand, obviously, metrics speak for themselves. The data speaks for itself. As we continue to grow, you want to continue to expand your operation. You want to be able to have the right tools to enable your team to execute, and you want to make sure for the partners that we're bringing on, we have the right tools in place. And so when we look at our KPIs operationally, and then our KPIs culturally, right? Are these tools enabling our team to do their job? And is the partnership evolving with the industry? The data speaks for itself, right? And we were talking about it earlier.
Yes.
I see the sales team out in the field quite often. They're ingrained with our team. The sales team probably knows less about what's going on under the hood than the team in the office and the data scientists putting it all together. But it's a family. It's a relationship. It's over the years they've worked closely together to where they know whatever we face in the industry, we're gonna have a solution for it. And we may not know that solution today, but this is the partnership that's going to get us there. And so as I look at key systems and the ability to scale, it just becomes a lot more apparent, especially when you compare to the other competitors that you guys have in the business. This is everyone has a place, and there are some amazing tools out there, but we continue to double down on our relationship with Lokad, and we know it's leading in the industry. And that's what we're focused on.
Thank you, Tim. Joannes?
Yeah, I mean, also one thing that is also very, maybe feel quite strange to people who are not familiar to the way Lokad works is that part of the role of the supply chain scientist is to constantly monitor and revise the very definition of the performance indicator. So it's not just monitoring the performance, is monitoring what you monitor. Yeah. Because you see, it may be sound strange, but as your company evolves, the strategy changes, and so you have to really challenge routinely, not every single day, but routinely, what is it that we are measuring? Because you see, another sin of people in this industry, I believe, is to go for a metric and then leave it unchallenged for a decade.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, obviously, there are some fundamentals. Inventory turns is a very good thing to have a look at. Yes. But then you have to pay close attention to many things, because again, if we go to inventory turns, for example, for the hose business, you have to pay attention to suddenly you're going to, because it's hose and you can split your hoses when you sell them, you can have things that rotates for a SKU and parts that do not rotate.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see, it may, under the abstraction of I have one SKU and this amount of stuff in stock, it may hide that a fraction of your inventory is not rotating at all.
Correct.
You see, so again, that's a sort of work from the supply chain scientist to really see, okay, my performance indicators tell me a story. Is it like the whole story?
Yeah.
There is obviously another danger is to have an entire wall of metrics, so you have so many numbers then that it doesn't stay any story at all. It's just confusion. So it's a balance. And but that's something that we are doing is to revise those and challenge those performance indicators with your teams.
Yeah.
So just to simply ask, do you really think that's the best number that Lokad can produce? If you had, a dream metric, what would it be? Can we think of something that is even more that speak even more closely of your intent, your strategic intent?
Yeah, and one of the things that I didn't mention earlier, but as you talk about it, the teams that work together have a great relationship to where they challenge each other, right? We'll submit a recommendation on something we want to incorporate, and the data scientists will maybe have a different opinion and say, hey, maybe we should look at it this way. Maybe that's not a data point you want to, or maybe we'll take a recommendation and say, well, our business is a little different. And I think that you have to be you have to be comfortable, challenging, the team that you're working with. And I think the relationship over time, they work together well because, if they don't understand it, they'll dig into it a little bit more, but they're not just blindly, accepting the change.
Yes.
They want to understand why we want to make it and then maybe offer something different if they think there's a better way. And we appreciate that, right? We're not the experts.
Yes, and also there is, in fact, one of the key reasons why we do that is that I think for enterprise software folks like Lokad, I would say probably the most difficult challenge is a little bit subtle. It's maintainability.
Yes.
You have a piece of software that keeps growing. How do you keep this complexity under control? You see, because the danger is that you can have sedimentation. We do STS 2015, that's the logic, and then we have to STS 2016, another layer of logic, and then it accumulates, it's sediment. And the danger is that fast forward a decade, you can end up with a monster, something that has all the complexity of all the stuff that ever happened to your business, including the ones that are now completely irrelevant because it's gone. You've moved the factory from one place to another. The old location is gone. All the logic that was related to this thing is completely pointless. But we need to maintain that. So what Lokad does is that very frequently when we challenge, it's just the idea is to make really sure is our understanding, that's first a way to challenge our own understanding. Do we really understand what you're asking from us? So because, for example, if we make a suggestion and people say, okay, no, you completely miss the plot. You're not even in the realm of what we mean. Let's re-communicate on that. That's very important. So that's a way for us to make sure that we kind of understand what is being told to us. But also it is a way to kind of preserve the overall complexity, what we call the technological mass of the solution. We need to, because again, if you want to stay agile, and you have 5 million lines of code that you have to maintain, you're not agile. It's going to take months to revisit all of that. So how can we keep, the core of STS within something like 10,000 lines of code so that when something big happens, we can, within days, possibly weeks, rewrite entire portions to really fit the new version of STS.
Sure.
Because now that would be my closing thought on that. It's something very very strange in this industry is that nowadays it takes more time to For example, if you move from one warehouse location to another, it takes more time to migrate the software very frequently than it takes to migrate the stuff and the people and the machinery.
And to build.
And that's kind of strange because normally, electrons move pretty fast, except when it's software where it's like, let's have this multi-year, ERP upgrade just to manage a new site. That's the one thing that we are paying really, really attention at is, again, back to my initial point, is maintainability of the software.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tim, I teach philosophy in my spare time, and one of the things that and a bit of psychology, one of the things I know is that you can't choose what other people value or the things that really resonate with them. So I'm just curious, on a personal level, is there anything in particular, because I know you're a people person, is there anything in particular about the project 10 years? Is there any moment or achievement or accomplishment that really resonates with you that you're proud about?
I think we've touched on a few of those moments, right? When you look over the last 10 years, no one had a crystal ball during those first days. I think about the team that evaluated bringing Lokad on. I think we had a goal during those early days, right? Create more efficient way to plan as we were continuing to grow. You can't predict what's going to happen, but when you look at the challenges that we were faced with, having to essentially shut down our business through COVID, make changes, ensure that the systems we put in place essentially are, shutting down, the ability to eliminate essentially fill rates to a certain point and then turning them back on and, having to adjust. The team is really resilient. And I think that word comes up a lot, and you have to be in our industry, but specifically within the organization. And I think when I look at the working group, they're resilient, they're innovative, and it's something that is the DNA of the success of the relationship, right? It's ingrained in our business. It's ingrained in your business, and I think that creates the great platform for what's to come. Right? We don't know the challenges we're going to face. We know there will be challenges, but I'm confident we have the right team to face those challenges.
Well, you just mentioned what's to come. I'm just curious, what are the next steps in the project?
We talked AirPro. We're doing AirPro 2.0. We're getting them more ingrained. We're looking at, we talked earlier about STS Aviation Group, right? How are we able to take a look at the demand that's happening within all sectors of our business, from MRO to interior mods, and how are we able to look at the data from our other business units and incorporate that into our one view, putting those tools in place, and then the ability to share that with our customers is really important, right? And when I say customers, I also mean our partners that we're distributing their parts, because you're right, they are large. They don't have the ability to move quick, but they expect their partners to have that ability, right? And to be able to show them the tools we have in place, that the planning for your product line is very different than the profile for this other partner we have. And these are the reasons why. I know our portfolio will continue to grow. I know our business will continue to expand, and to confidently say that I know I have the tool to be able to handle that is it's really important. It's really important as we grow our business, and we look at the next chapter for the relationship.
Well, I have only one last question, Tim, and I appreciate your time thus far, but
Sure.
Last question. Obviously, STS were very forward-thinking. Again, 10-year relationship. What would you say to other people today who are still, let's say, on the fence about embracing the kind of probabilistic technologies that has been the standard at STS for a decade? What advice would you give to those people?
I think you have to constantly evaluate the systems and tools you have in place, right? And I think the openness to do so. Now, we are confident Lokad is the right tool. Doesn't mean you're not being approached to look at other things, look at other software, look at what's out there. And that's what, when we look at the tools we have, best in industry, best in class for the work we do. And then I would invite them to look at the results that those systems and tools have yielded. And I've shared them with, frankly, with everyone from our competitors to your competitors. And so, I'm confident with what we have in place, and that it's the right tool, and it's the tool for the future, and it's a tool that'll continue to evolve with the landscape of our industry.
Well, Tim, thank you very much. I don't have any more questions, and I know Joannes and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us.
Well, thank you for having us in the office today, and appreciate it. I look forward to the next 10 years.